What's going on, guys? So today in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the Hakko T12 clone. So if you don't know anything about these irons, they're a clone of the Hakko T12 and T15 series of irons. Mostly I think it's the 951, which is pretty common. Now you can buy complete rip-off Hakko stuff on like eBay or AliExpress or whatever like that. But the problem with those ones is they're pretty poorly made because they're trying to fit everything into this thing to make it look like a genuine Hakko product. So there's all this stuff in there that they have to add in to make it look the same, like the housing and stuff has to look the same. So they're going to cut costs in other areas of the product. So like namely like the power supply and the board and stuff. So this little guy here is actually a kit. I bought mine pre-assembled because I'm lazy. And with this one, it's a little single board sort of soldering iron controller. And it has everything built in. It has like the MOSFET and everything. It runs off an STM32 microcontroller. And yeah, it's pretty good from what I've seen. And it's fully compatible with all the Hakko T12 tips. There's also custom firmware for this one as well to use JBC irons as well. But I haven't flashed this or anything. It's the stock firmware that you get it when you buy it off AliExpress or eBay or wherever you're buying it from. With these ones here, there's two main sort of companies you can go through to buy these iron kits and the tips and everything from. There's Hakko and then there's KSGER. And there's one more as well, but then can't remember the name. Anyway, they're all the same thing. They're just different brand names, and they put different margins and stuff. The build quality is usually about the same between all of them. But with Hakko, one thing that you should take note of is they actually have their own version of these T12 tips, and they call them the black tips. They just have a bit of So this piece here has like a black finish to it. Apparently they're better or something than the normal Hakko clone tips anyway, so I don't know, we'll find out. I don't have any of them at the moment. I'll probably do a follow-up video on this later on when I get a genuine Hakko T12 station. I might be getting one soon. I just have to source it really. So yeah, this is basically what you get in the kit. Most suppliers on AliExpress will only supply the station, a crappy power supply, and a tip. Now there's different versions of the station you can get. There's three main types. There's the smallest type here, which uses an external power supply. It is not earthed at all, so ESD stuff, if you're worried about that, maybe either modify the handpiece or the station or whatever and fix that. There's another version that's a bit more, it has an integrated power supply in it. It's just like one of those constant current LED driver supplies, you know, those generic ones, and it's just a bit longer. And then the third type, it's pretty uncommon, but you can get them. It's the same housing as the built-in power supply version, except it's got 18650 rechargeable cells in it, so it's actually a full portable iron. There is one other type, but it doesn't use the same board as these use. These have an OLED display. There's another one that uses just an LED 8-segment display, and you can get those in a full just iron with just a barrel connector on the end there like that. I wouldn't recommend those. They're good for just like a cheap iron if you just want a full handpiece iron, but these are a bit more versatile because you can switch out the handles and stuff. Taking a closer look at the unit, let's zoom it in. Now, depending on which one you get, it'll have different connectors on the front. This version I've got here has got a sort of smaller aviation plug, or DIN connector. Oh, not a DIN connector. What are they called? Anyway, so it has a smaller aviation plug on the front. Some of them have 6 pins, some of them have 4. This one's only got 4. This handle isn't the normal one you get with it. It's an optional extra. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. But yeah, this is smaller than the actual connector that the original T12 systems use, and saying that if you wanted to use a genuine handle or something on this, you would probably have to change the connector on either here or on the iron itself. I'd probably change it on here, to be honest. And then you've got a rotary encoder on the front here, nice and clicky, works really well. Also doubles as a button. That's for different features of the operating system. I guess you could call it operating system. It has a user interface anyway. And on the back here you have your standard barrel plug. It does have a buck converter inside, so you can use between 24 and 16 volts, 3 amps, and just a cheap switch. Now I've been using this pretty much daily at work, doing just like simple board repair stuff on phones, and it's fairly good. The problem I have is just mostly with the tips I have. I have one genuine Hakko tip and 2 Wacko tips, fake ones. And I'll get more into that in a moment. But first up, here's the handle. Now there's 2 versions of the handle. Well, actually there's 3 now. There's this one, which is a clone of the 3501, and it's actually modified. I don't think you can get this for the original T12 series. This is for a completely different iron. And the main advantage of this is you don't have to mess with a collar or anything, and also the distance between the hand and the tip is a little bit shorter. Not quite as short as the micro pencil, but you can still get in there pretty easy, and it's less bulky as well. You don't have to worry about the little clip-on extension as well. Also with this one, a lot of these have the feature where it'll put the iron to sleep. Now in the original Hakko series irons, a lot of them have an option where it's got I think it's a magnetic reed switch, or just a switch in the base here, and that connects to the station. And when you put your iron in there, it'll put the iron into sleep mode. So it doesn't actually turn the iron off, but it drops it down to I think about 150 C. And that's just to make sure you don't burn the tip out, basically. Don't burn the element out. Just leaving it on all day. These don't have that because they're made to be cheap and small. So what they have in here instead, this one has I can't open it because once you put it together it won't come back apart again. Actually, when I first got it, it didn't work. So I had to pull it apart and realign stuff, and now it works. This one inside actually has a Mercury Switch inside it, just a little tube with a blob of mercury in it and 2 contacts. So that's how it knows when the iron's being put up and picked down. It's basically just a really crappy motion sensing thing. So if you wiggle the iron around, pick it up, move it around or whatever, it resets the time delay on this. So if you don't move the handle, if you just sit it still for probably, I think the default's a minute. I set mine to about 5 just because it was getting a bit annoying. It'll put the iron into sleep mode, and you can set the sleep temperature and everything as well. By default, I think it's 150. Okay, now onto the tips, which is the most interesting part. So I have 3 tips here. Let's move in the frame. I have 3 tips here. So 2 of these are fake, one of them is original. You can kind of tell. I have a super fake one, and then one that I think is actually genuine because it's not shit, basically. So the genuine one I have here is the T12-I. Now, if you're wondering what the difference between T12 and T15 is, it's nothing. It's just they just changed the name for different regions, and I think there's more options for the T15 as compared to the T12. T12 is mainly for like Australia and New Zealand and stuff. T15's for the rest of the world, basically. I don't know why they have a different thing. Hakko, generally in Australia, if you buy the Australian spec one, or the Australian version of it, it costs a lot more. I don't know why. Just no reason, basically. It's usually cheaper to import an iron and then convert it to 240 volts from 110, 120, whatever they use. So yeah, so this is the genuine Hakko tip. Let's see if I can zoom in there. So on the side here it should have, there we go, Hakko, and then Don't know if you can see that. It says Hakko on there. It's a little stamp, and it has lead-free. They're all lead-free irons. I don't understand the difference between a lead-free and leaded. I don't know. I don't think I've ever come across a iron that's made for lead solder outside of just like specialty stuff. So it's kind of sad that, I don't know, apparently these wear out faster if you use lead solder on them, but what you can do? I can't find anything better. And this one's a T12 ILS. This is a bit skinnier. So if you look on Hakko's website, you can look up all the dimensions of these tips and stuff. But basically the ILS, which is the one on the top here, is a bit smaller tip and it's a bit longer as well. So this ILS is a fake one. The plating's pretty much gone on it. I've only used this probably 3 or 4 times. It's pretty rubbish. I'm going to replace it with something better, probably a genuine ILS, if I can get my hands on one. And see, like, it's all burnt on the end here. I normally run this tip at, I think, 350 or 250. Can't remember. It wasn't super hot, so, and on the product page for these, they say don't take them over 380, which is a bit weird. So they're obviously not very good tips. Now this one here, this is another fake one. This one is the one I ordered with the iron. So you can get, most kits, they'll be like, you can pick one tip and the kit. So I picked the T15 JSO2. So as you can see, there are different models, but they're the exact same tips. They work perfectly the same. They reach the same temperature, everything like that. So this one is non-genuine, but if you have a look, this one actually has the Hakko stamp on it, and as far as I can tell, it looks the same. The finish on the end is the same. The only difference I can find with these is the connector on the end. So the one on the top is the genuine one, and the one on the bottom is the quote-unquote fake one. And it's kind of funny, the fake one looks nicer. There is another version of these tips. I think they're actually T30, not T15, but they look the same. They actually have an extra piece that the tips are pre-calibrated from the factory, so when you connect them to whatever station they work with, it resets the calibration for that tip. So these cheaper stations, they don't support that. Instead, they just have different profiles with calibrations. I think this has 3 custom firmware. You can have up to 5 or 10 different tips, which is really useful. Yeah. Apart from everything else that comes with it, that's about it really. The only other thing is, don't bother buying them with the power supply if you're buying them from China, because the power supplies are generally fake, rubbish, crap. So this power supply is apparently, let me zoom back out. This power supply is apparently 24 volts at 3 amps, which is suspiciously the max rating of this. More than likely this is maybe, I don't know, probably 24 volts, but maybe only like an amp or 2. So if you buy this iron and it's not very powerful, and you're wondering why, and you're using this power supply, just throw it in the bin. Get like a laptop power supply, something good quality, 90 watts, around about there. What I'm using on mine is it's from a JBL speaker. Nice and heavy too. That one is like lightweight, like weighs less than my point and shoot camera. There's not much weight to it. This one is 19 volts at 3 amps. So it's sort of in the middle there as far as power output, but works perfectly fine. I haven't had any issues with power output on this thing. And being from a good product, good power supply too. Now, moving on, let's turn on the iron and see what it does. I'm going to use this JSO2 tip. J is a 02, I guess it's the proper name. And as far as these handles go, they don't fit into these cheaper iron holders, not really. They sort of flop around a bit. I normally just sit this on the bench, because as long as you don't bump it into something and melt plasticky things, they sort of just sit fine on their own there. I just brought this in to get to clean the tip if I needed to clean it. Now, One really annoying thing about this is I'll turn it on without the tip. I've already set the settings in this. This has battery backed up memory, so it's not non-volatile memory. It has a little battery inside, so keep that in mind. If it's not saving, maybe check the battery. It's just a little laptop one, you can unplug it. I'm not going to use the power supply it came with because I don't want to blow myself up. I've never actually turned that power supply on, I just don't trust it. I kept it mainly just for the barrel connector if I needed one, but this is a pretty standard size barrel connector, so it seems fine. Now, what you're about to hear is probably the most annoying noise in the world. Now, this iron has an alarm, and by default the alarm will go off if there's anything going funky with this, if it's not making proper connection or whatever, or it's not connected at all, or I think if you leave it on for too long, it'll just beep annoyingly. So I'm gonna plug this in the back. As far as like this moving around on the bench, it does come with little rubber feet, and I haven't had a problem with it sliding around, but I usually use it on those anti-static mats, so they don't slide around. In hindsight, I probably should have got the bigger one, but this is really good because I actually carry this in my bag to work every day. I don't leave it at work, I use it at home as well, so yeah. So let's just turn it on. So I've already reset the settings on this to turn off the alarm. You can't turn it off when it turns on. It's like a test. It's really annoying. If it says error or anything, this would be constantly beeping. When I first got it, this wasn't lining up properly inside. The contacts were bent, and it wasn't actually touching the contacts of this. And trying to work it out why it wasn't working, this was beeping the whole time. You know, it's like a screaming baby, just annoying. So what I'll do is I'll just turn this off. You can hot swap the tips, but I generally don't, because I don't have anything to grab it with normally on hand. Just a skin, and I don't want to burn my hands off. I think I've got this one set to 370 at the moment. Sometimes this doesn't make contact inside, it'll just say error, you just twist it a bit, wiggle it, and it starts working. I don't have a tip thermometer for this, but generally from using it, it seems fine. I haven't noticed anything strange with it. It gets up to temperature really quickly as well. Being a direct element inside the tip also means that it's going to recover really quickly when you're soldering on like multi-layer boards and stuff too, so pretty cool. So what I'm going to do, also first I think I'll go through the settings of this and not burn my hand. You can't access the menu, I don't think, while it's in error mode. I can't remember. I could probably check that out actually. Let's see. Yeah, so you can get to the menu without the tip connected. So to get to the menu, you just press the button and turn, and it'll bring up the menu, or you can turn it off. Tapping the button once will put it into boost mode. It'll boost it up to whatever set temperature you want. It just adds an extra 50 normally, 50 degrees. I think I've got it set at the moment to boost it by 20, because I run the iron fairly hot anyway for most of the stuff I do. So yeah, let's zoom in here. So as far as some of the settings go that you have auto sleep, auto power off. I think that is a longer timer for when you don't move the handle around, and it'll turn the system off. Boost duration, so it's usually set to a minute. Boost degree, default's 50 plus, you can turn that off. Wake up method, encoder and handle, so you can wake it up by just jogging the temperature dial, or you can just pick up the handle. Not all handles have that have the little switch in them, so sometimes you'll want that. So just set the encoder and handle. Buzzer switch, so even though it says off, it's only off when it's running, but when it boots up, it's not off. So like those annoying ones. Battery guard is for the battery powered one. You can turn that off. Firmware just shows you the firmware settings and the date it was written. So you can update the firmware on these. You need a little, I think it's a ISCP dongle thingy, and then you can factory reset. So yeah, pretty basic. So and to set the temperature is really simple. Just turn the dial and the set temperatures up the top. Shows you the duty cycle up the top. Set at 350. Heats up nice and quick. Shows you the voltage and the, I don't know what that is. I think that's the boost temperature. I think. Not sure what that one actually means. I'll put it in the description, whatever it means. I've never really paid attention to it. It's an iron. I only use, like, I don't. Sometimes I feel that with soldering irons, the more features you have, the more you just end up worrying about it. Like, if you have like a basic like Hakko T12, you know, set the temperature and then you solder. Really, you're not working in like a factory or a lab, or you know, you're not building rockets. So most people aren't building rockets with them. So most people shouldn't really care about that sort of stuff. But I don't know, nerds like things like that, I guess. So I'm going to try how well this works on a multi-layer board. So I've got this old graphics card. I think it's like maybe 4 layers, I think. It's hard to tell. I don't have a microscope, so I can't see. But yeah, let's try poking at it with a hot stick. Okie dokie. So I've got some Multicore solder here. Pretty basic, and I've got some enamel wire. Let's see if I can unwind it. I don't think this is the roll that I unwound. Yeah, so this is 0.1 millimeter enamel wire, magnet wire, whatever you want to call it. And this is called jump wire, whatever. And let's try sodomizing something simple. Let's go for like a really big component like this little guy here. I use some of my cheap, it's fake flux. It's fake Kingbo flux, which is fake AMTECH flux, and it's very old and dry and just doesn't want to go anywhere. It's been sitting out in a cupboard for like 2 years. Yeah. They're quite cheap flux. Actually, let's solder to the ground side. I could solder directly to a ground plane, but you often don't do that. So, zoom in a bit here. Alright. So, oh man, this is really shitty flux. Really bad flux. Don't buy bad flux. Alright, so, whoa, it's backwards. I'm trying to burn my hand. So that's the tip after probably about 3 months of heavy use. Some of the nickel plating's come off it. The chrome's completely fucked on the end. But it still wets fine, and the underside is pretty good. I like the JSO2 tip because it's very short. It's good for removing bridges off, say, like, you know, really big components like these, whatever they are. Whatever they are. I'm tired, I don't care. Yeah, but it's good for removing bridges and stuff. It's too fat for most micro soldering work. You can do like basic stuff like charging connectors and LCD connectors and stuff like that. Really fine pitch. Just fine pitch connectors, things like that. But when it comes down to like soldering like really teeny tiny little resistors and stuff like these guys here, I consider them fairly large size compared to what most of the stuff I usually deal with. You can do it on that. You could even do that by eye. But yeah, anyway, back to what I was doing. So let's sodomize this capacitor. Yeah, it wets it pretty good bird. So yeah, stick them on. Alright, let's put a bit more flux on there. Some people don't like using lots of flux, but most of the time more flux is better, in my opinion. Unless you're dealing with surface mount microphones and things, if you get flux into like surface mount microphone, it kills it. That's the biggest problem that people used to have with the Galaxy S3, was you go to change the charging connector on it, the microphone's right next to it. Most people thought it was heat. It's actually flux getting into the microphone and killing it. It sort of gums it up and then it doesn't work. So if you're doing doing soldering near a microphone, just avoid getting flux everywhere. So and then, I don't know, let's run a jumper from there to... Let's run a jumper from there to this fan connector, which is also on the ground plane. Now the cool thing about this tip is I can go backwards and get better connection. I'm going to bump this up to 370. Much better. So a bit of flux. Like that. Grab this wire, pull it real tight. I want to see how strong this solder joint is. This wire is so thin that you don't usually have to pre-strip it, as in like burn off the enamel. Usually as you're soldering it, it's good enough. So as far as a connection goes, I'm actually holding that up with my wire, and the wire itself broke, not the connection. So let's have a quick look at this. So from there, from the ground plane, nice and tight, to, I think that's the ground. Looks like it. If I plug this in, you'd probably find out pretty damn quick if it was short or not. But yeah, being enamel, I love enamel wire. I think people should use it more often for ModChips rather than wrapping wire. Wrapping wire is very messy. It's hard to solder, and a lot of the time you don't really need 30 gauge wire for most connections on ModChips. Sometimes you do, because you end up with a higher resistance or whatever, and that matters with timing and things, but you can get much thicker enamel wire than this. Even if you go to 30 gauge enamel wire, you'll probably have a much better time of soldering it, basically. You don't have to mess around with stripping the wire and then it burns and looks like shit, basically. As far as how well this would work for doing, basic mod chip work, like doing something real simple, like a PS2 mod chip or something like that, there's a lot of wires, but they're not fairly small. The points aren't that small, basically. They're fairly easy to solder. You could use this tip. I would actually recommend getting a JS02 tip for most mod chip install work. You're not going to be running jumpers underneath BGAs, so you should be fine. And I think I haven't seen a console yet, not even a handheld, that gets down to that tiny pitch that a lot of phones have. Even a lot of MacBooks, like laptops and things, usually use finer pitches than most consoles do, even handheld stuff. So yeah, I'd recommend this for someone that wants to get into doing mod chip work. They're very cheap. Put it in comparison, this is in Australian dollars, but if I want to buy a genuine Hakko T12 T15 iron, I'd probably have to go for the 951 or 954 or whatever it is, 942, whatever it's called. I'll put a picture in, you know what it looks like. I'd have to go with one of them, and I had a look yesterday, they're still over $400 for the station itself, with the shitty handle it comes with. Well, it's not shitty, it's just a bit hard to use, and that's probably I don't think they even come with tips. I think they come with one tip and you can't choose which one. The only thing I don't like about this is just the general build quality. It's falling apart, basically. This strain relief actually just strains the wire even more. It's not holding anything in. I could glue it in, but I want to see how well it lasts. The quality of the plastic on it looks like it's made out of old garbage bins, old wheelie bins. The rubber handle's nice. It hasn't gone sticky or whatever. It's starting to get shiny where it's wearing down. As far as like heat coming through, I'm holding this now. It's a bit warm right at the end here. But yeah, other than that, I kind of don't like the fact that it's got a Mercury Switch in it. It's pretty fine. It's not going to kill anyone unless you break it and then drink it. But yeah, as far as that, I'd probably recommend, unless you know the tip you're going to get is good quality, I'd steer away from the cheap $2 ones on AliExpress. I would go, if you can afford it, what I normally do is I'll buy the cheap tip first to see if I like the shape of it and everything and if it's actually useful. And then by the time I've found out if I like it or not, the nickel plating's burnt off anyway. And then I'll just go out and buy the genuine tip from Hakko because they're fully compatible. So put in comparison, most tips are for the fake ones are between 6 and 10 Australian dollars, and the genuine ones, to buy them in Australia, is about $35 each. This genuine one, which is not the ILS, the T12i, this one, I got it used on eBay, and it was about, I think I wanted $20 for it, and then there was a coupon for $10 off eBay if you spend over $20. So I ended up getting this tip for $10, which is great. I haven't actually used this one that much yet, just because it's an eye. It's not useful for most of the stuff I do. An eye size, this size tip, a T12i or T15i, would also be very good for mod work. But honestly, get the JS02 first, because it's designed for removing solder bridges, and if you're soldering onto quad flat packs and stuff to run mod wires, get this one instead. It's much easier to solder stuff. So yeah, that's sort of my quick little overview. I've been recording for 33 minutes, but I'm going to cut this down a fair bit. Yeah, so if you're looking for a budget iron for doing mod chip installs, whatever, fixing things, get this one. It is technically compatible with the micro pencil, but no one I've seen online actually does that, so no one's bothered messing with it. I'm trying to get a micro pencil so I can try and see if it works. I don't see why not. They have the same pin out as the normal T12 handles. So yeah, leave a comment down below what you think if you want to get one. I'll leave some descriptions down below, probably just AliExpress links. They're much cheaper on AliExpress than they are on eBay, because the people that make this Quicko have their own official store on there. So yeah, until next time, see ya.